Hi, everyone. I cannot believe it has been almost 6 weeks since I recorded something for you earlier in the semester, our first attempt to communicate with you about what's going on in class and hopefully giving you resources to help you understand better what your child is learning in our Bible class. I'm sitting at my house again on a beautiful fall afternoon. I hope everyone's had a great weekend. I'm a little bit behind on getting to this video because of our DC trip. We finished the unit that I'm going to talk with you about tonight the Friday before we left on Monday for the trip, and so I'm a bit behind on getting that out to you. And as far as your child's explanation and summative that they have done about the unit, that will be ready for you to see in on campus tomorrow, so Monday, the 24th. After 3 o'clock, we'll have those ready for you to go. Mr. Shambly and I still have a few that we're trying to finish. So check in tomorrow and we should have those finished. But I wanted to go ahead and give you an idea of what it was that we actually did over the last few weeks, and so that the summative would make sense to you. We start off with something with a concept that we got from a particular book. The name of the book is A Passionate Life. The authors are Breen and Callistead. And at the end of this video, I will have all of the things I refer to, all the materials. There's a link to a video, some things like that. I will have at the end of the video so that if you want to look at these materials, then you can. But anyway, in this book, the authors refer to this way of looking at life where you go through a series of steps intentionally. It's called the learning circle, to really evaluate your life and look at decisions and things that happen, incidents that happen, and stop and really think about them, which we know is not necessarily the greatest strength of an adolescent. And so that's why we bring it up. And the authors use the terminology of a kairos moment, Kairos. It's a Greek word. It's a Greek word for time, but not like chronological time, but a specific moment in time that is a moment of opportunity. And so we talk about this concept with the kids and challenge them to look back through their life and think of those kairos moments. They can be good or bad, but for whatever reason, they made an impact somehow. They can be fairly significant, like a death or a move or some tragedy or some wonderful thing that happens that obviously we could see makes an impact on our lives. But it can also be the small decisions day to day, the thing they said to their friend that really changed the whole friendship for good or bad in a particular day. I mean, those kinds of things, truly, again, trying to get them to stop and think about their choices and actions and how life is made up of a series of those every day. And that's a good thing for us parents to think about as well. So one way that we help them understand this is we gave them some case studies that they worked on in groups where we gave them typical scenarios that teens might encounter where they as a group had to determine, okay, so what should they do at this point? And what kinds of steps would they need to go through to think about their actions, and what kinds of consequences might there be, and all of that, and tried to come up again with as many scenarios that are typical for a teenager or they might be facing as they head into high school in the next year or two, just to give them some ways to think about their thinking, which we don't often do very much. To help kind of bolster this and for them to see this isn't just a random thing that we picked out to have in Bible class and seem like, well, why are we doing that in here? We used a video from Andy Stanley, who is at North Point, the minister at North Point, and he takes the idea, he doesn't use a kairos moment, but it's essentially the same idea. He talks about the story of Jacob and Esau and how Esau gave up everything. He didn't even realize what he was giving up when he gave up his birthright for a bowl of stew. And this lesson is part of a series that he did termed Appetites. And this particular one we have used, I know it's about 3 years that we've used it, and it's very effective in, again, looking at a real story of someone in God's story who made a terrible decision that affected generation after generation after generation. In fact, the whole biblical narrative, because of that one moment of feeding an appetite, literally, but also because of his unawareness of what was really important. And so, again, at the end of my video, I'll have a link to this video. It's about 45 minutes of Andy Stanley. And it's good. Again, it was geared towards adults anyway, but it works for our students. And you might find something meaningful in it, and at least would have an understanding of what your child had seen. So then, in the midst of all of this, it worked out really well. We had Adam Paw, who had worked previously at GAC as a counselor, but stepped down from that 2 years ago to work with the Pathways group, who do all sorts of drug and alcohol rehabilitation and programming. And they have a facility that they work with people, that aren't in schools, but then they also, under Adam's direction, have a program where they go out to schools, both public and private, and have people that have been through addiction of some sort and have an amazing story to tell, have come through it, and want to share their mistakes and their journey with kids to help them not make the same mistakes that they did. And so we had two guys come with Adam who are not that much older than your students. They were one was 18 and one was 22, and tell their story. And in light of, again, looking at choices and stopping and thinking, after they talked with us, we talked with the kids about, can you see the patterns? Can you see where they could have stopped, where they didn't stop, where choices were made that made all the difference in a negative way for them? Then finally, we ended the unit with a way to review the entire Bible. And, they go through Old Testament in the 6th grade. 7th grade is the story of Jesus and the Gospels primarily. And so we get to 8th grade, and as we've, let you know before, so much of what we try to do is to take all that they've learned from whatever source and kind of lay it out there and help them dig deeper and ask deeper questions about, well, so how real is this? How does this apply? How do we live this out? And so we like to begin the year by reviewing the entire story of God, and we pick around 42 of the key stories that tell the whole theme of Scripture that sometimes we get disconnected, especially as children. They hear these individual Bible stories that are somewhat people-focused, David and Goliath, and, you can just go on and on, these great stories, but they don't connect them very well to, well, what's the point? And what we try to tell them is, well, the whole thing is one great epic. It is God's story. And it's not like it's over. It's continuing, and it's continuing through them. And each of them got a story from the big story that they summarized, and we shared. We sat around and did it Hebrew style, where they actually share the story. They're part of the story, as the people of God would have done before they had written down Scripture to tell their story. And then we looked at those individual stories in light of what we had learned about stopping and thinking, just like the story with Jacob and Esau, and them looking at their own story, their own choices when they've not made the right decisions, or maybe they made the right decisions and benefited from that. We had them look at each individual story in Scripture and see, when was the moment that person either turned to God in obedience or turned away from God in some way. And then you can see the effect through the storyline up through Christ. And then, like we said, through us today as we continue on living. So I hope this was meaningful for them. And again, it's been a while since they wrote the summative because of the DC trip. But I would love for you to talk with them and see if they could talk with you about the Kairos moment that they wrote about and how they understood their part of God's great story that they wrote on. Like I said, at the end of the video here in just a second, I'll have links to the Andy Stanley video, the name of the book that we use for the whole learning circle Kairos moment idea. And then also I wanted to recommend, in light of this topic, any of Hal Runkel's books. I'm sure you're familiar with him. Scream Free is his organization, and he's written many books on marriage and parenting. And his books one of his principal ideas that he uses with his books is the idea of the power of pause, is what he calls it. And in light of looking at life and decisions and stopping long enough to reframe where what moment you're in and what decision you should make, the power of pause is a very powerful concept. And so his books might be very useful for you in any number of ways, either for you as you parent your children or just on your own in your marriage, just in your other relationships, and in looking at that idea. So hope this is helpful. Again, you will see your child's summatives in on campus tomorrow afternoon after 3 o'clock. And I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you probably. I'll have another video for you close to Thanksgiving, which again, of course, is hard to believe we're almost there. Thanks so much.